Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Boy, have I got a good show for you guys. Last night, I come to a revelation of understanding something. And it's been right under my nose the whole time. For years now, it's been right under my nose. Have you guys ever seen something like this? Say you come out in the morning, you want to make your coffee. You go back and look at the table again, and all of a sudden you see it. It's right there the whole time, right in front of your eyes. It's just that the color of the packaging was changed a little bit. Well, that's the way with me. This has been right there under my eyes the whole time, and I didn't see it, and I had a revelation last night. I seen it for what it is. I've done talks about how when this system was established back in around 1913, 1914, with the Federal Reserve System and stuff, I've talked about how it was created for exponential, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but exponential growth. And how in 2008 we had a contraction. Well, this is everything. And what gave me this revelation and made me see was I was watching a program by Chris Martinson. And I'm going to put the link in the description to the program. But he was talking about how with exponential oil, he was talking about oil, but it works the same way. And he was talking about how say there was a stadium, and say you were handcuffed or whatever up in the top bleachers of the stadium, and there was a magical drop of water on the stadium floor. Now, it's like a football stadium, you know? And if that drop of water doubled, I think he said every minute or every half minute, if it doubled to 2 drops, and then 4 drops, and 8 drops. Well, you know, you're up there looking down at the floor of the stadium, and you can't even see it at first. For the first 5 minutes, you wouldn't even be able to see it. It would be the size of a teaspoon or smaller. You'd have to have binoculars even to see it. But it's doubling and doubling and doubling. Time passes. Now, as that's doubling, the water level would be rising towards you, and you're up there. And you can't move. You can't leave. He said, how long would you have before the water level would come up to where you are, up in the bleachers, and fill the entire stadium? If it doubled every few seconds, you know. He said it would be like 50 minutes. That's how long you'd have before it filled the entire stadium. He says, so what if I got it wrong? He said, what if the stadium was actually, I got the size of the stadium wrong a little bit. Say the stadium was twice as big. He said, well, you'd have 1 more minute. Evidently, it's doubling. It doubles every minute. It doubles every minute. He said you'd have 1 more minute. That's all you'd have. The stadium was double the size. You know? Because this is how an exponential curve works. You know, the last little bit, it goes really fast. It goes faster and faster toward the end. And the last little bit, it starts going straight up. Well, when he was saying this, I was thinking about all these charts I've looked at, and they're all like what I call a hockey curve. It's all exponential. It's all exponential, or whatever you call it, right? All of it. And I got thinking to myself about this, and I couldn't drop it. I kept thinking about it, like for an hour or 2 afterwards. And I come to a realization that the important part about forecasting what's going to happen in the future in our economy, the important part, I've been overlooking it, just like you overlook the Folgers coffee in the middle of the table. You saw it, but it didn't register. And that's the way with me. I saw this, I knew about this, but it wasn't registering that this is the key component to what's going on with the whole thing. And the reason why is because they've created a system where it's a credit system. money borrowed into existence. And whenever they create this money, doesn't matter whether it's a fractional reserve banking system creating the money through the power of fractional reserve banking, or the central bank creating money through quantitative easing, or numerous other bailouts, or it doesn't matter. They create more debt. There's interest attached to this debt. And that interest accrues into a massive pile of debt. Well, they don't create the money. When they create money, they don't create the money to pay the interest on the debt. And that interest keeps accruing. So like if you got even 1% interest, well, in 100 years, that's 100%. Okay? Well, 1% is extremely low. In 100 years, you got 100% of it. So it's equal to the whole money that was lent out. And it keeps accruing each year. They don't create that money. And so if you try at any point to pay off the debt, all the money disappears. The system just basically, let's call it a meltdown. It melts down like a nuclear reactor melts down. And this cannot be allowed to happen because it just basically, it would completely wipe out everything. It's just wipe out. Okay? So, but with this curve, this exponential curve, and when it goes straight up, it's much like a rocket on the launch pad. There comes a certain point where it starts to make this curve straight up. Now, you know, with a rocket on a launch pad, ready to go, the first few seconds when the rocket lifts off, okay, I drew a diagram for you guys. Okay, here's a diagram. Now, got a little guy standing next to the rocket. It's going to take off. And he's in a NASA-made suit, so he can't get hurt. The suit's all red colored. It's a special flame retardant material, okay? So he's not going to get hurt. Puts his hands out against the rocket, and he has his hands on the side of the rocket, and the rocket blasts off. When it first blasts off, it's moving very, very slow, and he can feel the silver metal sliding against his hand very slowly upwards. It's maybe only moving 1 mile an hour. But the rocket is a perfect illustration of this exponential curve. The rocket's going to accelerate faster and faster and faster as it reaches escape velocity to leave the Earth's atmosphere. So when it first starts, it's only moving maybe 1 mile an hour. Maybe 2 seconds later, it's moving 5 miles an hour. And a couple seconds later, it's moving 20 miles an hour. It's a constant acceleration. Well, this is what they've basically created with this monetary system. There's a blast-off point. It goes along for years and years and years with very, very slow, almost nothing. Like from 1914 up until, say, 2008. It was just a very, very slow, gentle curve upwards, and it was nothing, practically. But I believe, now looking at what I see here, that 2008 was the blast-off of this exponential increase in the monetary supply. And now here's the kicker, guys. Drew another chart for you guys. And in this chart, what we see is the curve. The curve is in black line. Now the yellow line beneath it is the area. If you go below that yellow line, you're in danger of the system collapsing. And this is if you're not increasing the money supply fast enough. You go below the yellow line. And so who's increasing the money supply is the banks out there in conjunction with the Fed. If they're lending a lot of money, increasing the money supply, they're keeping up with this curve. The black line. If they start to lay off and they're not lending enough money out there into the system and people aren't spending enough money and stuff, well then the money supply starts to go into deflation and it starts to drop below the yellow line. If it goes down too far below the yellow line, all of a sudden the system starts to collapse. So in 2008, things didn't work out quite right and started to drop below the yellow line. The system started to collapse. They said within 2 hours, the system would have completely melted down. Okay? So they had to pump money into the system. And they've kept pumping money in ever since. And they've kept us, for the most part, maybe just under the line as the exponential curve goes up. They're just keeping us just under the line. I think what happened is back in 2018 or whatever, when they were doing the quantitative tightening, I think the quantitative tightening caused us to drop below the yellow line. Okay? And they got to keep up to the black line at least, or to the yellow line at least, if they don't want the system to collapse. And I think we darn near almost had another collapse situation. And I think this is what the repo's all about. Getting us back up to the black line again. Now, as long as we stay near that black line, as long as we don't deviate down below the yellow line, well, as long as the Fed keeps us up to that black line, everything's going to be hunky-dory, except, there's going to be more and more money out there. And your money's going to start to lose value quicker and quicker and quicker. But they got to keep up. They can't they can't fall back. Because if they fall back, the system collapses. So they got to keep up to that black line. It's a desperate situation because the black line is soon going to go vertical. It's blasting off. It's taking off to space. And, okay, what do? Well, they're going to have to keep up to that black line or else the system collapses. Okay? So they can't fall back. And if they try to fall back, they say, oh, we're going to cut spending and we're going to raise interest rates and we're going to cut our balance sheet down and everything, all this kind of malarkey. As soon as they do that, system's going to start to collapse. And then they're going to have to rush in and they're going to have to do extra. They're going to have to work extra hard, pumping money into the system like they're doing now. They're paying for what they did in quantitative tightening right now. They're bringing it back up to the black line again. As long as they stay up to that black line, the system will stay functioning. The stock market won't collapse. Nothing will collapse. The stock market's going to follow that black line up too. Everything's going to follow that black line up. All these bubbles are going to follow that black line up. Everything's going to blow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, what happens? Well, because this is exponential, they can't keep up with it forever. It's going to reach a terminal velocity in the end where it's going so fast up that the dollar's toast. Basically, you go into the store and want to buy an apple, and an apple's going to be $1 trillion. I mean, this is where we're going with this, because they can't possibly keep up with it, because it's a rocket ship heading to Mars. In the end, it's going to exceed a certain velocity that they can't keep up. They just can't keep up to the black line. It's going to be going up so fast, straight up so fast, that they can't keep up. But what do? Well, there's only one solution. And how far away is that before we hit that point where they can't keep up with the black line any longer? Because now we're going exponential. We're going to start going straight up. And it's going to accelerate its speed exponentially. So what are they going to do? And how far in the future is that before it hits that point where it hits escape velocity and it's going so fast that they can't keep up with it? These are big questions now that I see this for what it is. And I can see the crisis is not going to occur until we get to that point where they can't keep up anymore. They can't even run the presses fast enough to create enough money. And they have to fall back. Because once they fall back and they go below the yellow line, it's crisis time. And what are they going to do? Well, I see it's only one way out. It's only one thing they can do at that point in time. That's when they're going to have to do what everybody's been talking about, a what do you call it? A shift over, a sudden change of direction. They're going to have to flip the switch and say, okay, we're done. The fiat currency's done. It's over. It's finished. It's a reset. It's time for a reset. But if they try to flip over into a fiat currency that's unbacked by anything, the same thing's going to happen again. Nobody's going to have and not only that, the distrust that this is going to create in all of the fiat currencies is unimaginable. And people are going to know then. People are going to be aware then. Hey, you got to back your currency with something. And so they're going to be looked at to back it with something. Now, what can they back it with? Well, I know you guys are out there and most of you are screaming, gold, gold. You know? Well, that is an option. They might want to back it with gold. Now, I'm almost certain that the Chinese and the Russians have already figured out what I'm talking about right now. They probably figured out, they got some very bright people working for them. They've probably figured this out a while ago, and this is why they're hoarding gold, Russia and China, because they're going to go with gold. Russia and China is going to go with gold to back it, to back what they got. You know, when this happens, when this whole thing goes completely exponential or whatever. Okay? So Russia and China, they're definitely probably going to go with gold. Will the West go with gold? I don't know for sure. But think about this for a minute. Think about one of the vulnerabilities of if they go with gold. There is a vulnerability. For them, this would be a big deal. Now, for me, it's no big deal. I'd say, hey, you know what? Go with gold. But for them, they'd say, oh, I don't know. Because if we go with gold, this is what they're going to, I think what they're going to think. They're going to think, if we go with gold, we can't see it in the system. What if people own it out there? And we can't see it because it's real, it's tangible, it's in the real world. It's not on our computer. That might be something that might come up for them. They might think about that. They might say, hey, if we go with gold, then people can own it out in the system, and it's what's backing our monetary supply. Well, we can confiscate it all, they'll probably say to themselves, or try to, but that may be hard because we can't see it. We can't see it on our computer screens. See? So there's a question. What are they going to go with to actually back because they're going to have to back the currency with something hard. I guarantee you this. When this thing goes exponential. Anyway, how much time do we have? Well, if the rocket ship blasted off in 2008, we're already like 11 years in, and we're on this curve going up, I think we're a lot deeper into it than you want to think. It's kind of like, this is what Chris Martenson said. He said, if you've got this giant stadium, right, filling with water, the magic drop of water, it doubles every minute, and you got 50 minutes before it gets to you. He said, this 5 minutes before, he said the stadium is still 97% empty. 5 minutes before it gets to you. So, being as we felt the first impact of this way back in 2008, and now we're 11 years further in, and being as they've said that the dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power since they started this stupid system, you know, I would say we're a long ways up that curve, that heading toward vertical. And so, how much time do we have left? it really goes fast from here on in. It starts to really exponentially increase and go super fast from here on in. That much I can tell you. And they're not going to be able to hide it with accounting tricks. I'll call it accounting tricks. The things that they're doing, like suppressing the price of gold to keep the dollar strong, suppressing the price of gold and silver, and euro dollars and all these tricks that they do, and lending money out to all these countries to create an artificial uh, demand for dollars. That's what we got going on right now, is an artificial demand for dollars, because all these countries have to make their repayments in dollars. It's making an artificial demand for dollars. They're pulling all these accounting tricks, trying to hide this exponential curve that they have to follow, and so maybe because they're hiding it, maybe we're a lot deeper in than anybody can actually account for. Maybe we're 5 minutes before midnight, sort of thing. You know what I mean? Because Chris Martinson, in his illustration of the football stadium filling with water, he said that 5 minutes before the water gets to you up in the bleachers, the stadium's still 97% empty. Now, you've been in there for 50 minutes. Well, you've been in there 45 minutes. You got 5 minutes left before it gets to you. And the stadium's 97% empty. So it really starts to go fast at the tail end. That's when it goes vertical. I think we're in the vertical stage now, or beginning it. And I think this is the reason why the Fed's pumping all this money into the system, because they want to keep up with it. They have to keep up with it, or the whole system implodes. And fin. When the system implodes. And so, this is a crazy situation. And I mean, this is a theory of mine. What's actually going on. You guys can take it as a theory. And how do I really think I'm right about this? I hope not. But I tend to think maybe I am right about this. And anyway, guys, it's kind of a little bit of a scary show, because it's a crazy system. But, we're going to get through it somehow. But the system actually, I think that the dollar, the handwriting's already on the wall. The dollar's going to be toast in a couple more years. And so is all the other fiat currencies. But they're going to stick with them till the very end, until you got to go in and you got to carry a whole wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. They'll stay with it right up until that point, even past that point. Think about a few of the good things that it'll do. One, you don't have to worry about the U.S. debt anymore. That'll be gone. Because it'll be the same price as an egg. The U.S. national debt. And, if your credit cards are all packed full of money on them and everything, I mean, that money's just not going to be worth nothing. If this is right, if this is the way it's really going, because the dollar is just going to lose at a certain point. All of their accounting tricks and stuff aren't going to work anymore, and the dollar's going to start to lose value really, really fast. Not against the U.S. dollar index so much, because all these currencies are going to be going down together. So what's the dollar being compared against right now? The euro mostly. Well, the euro's going to be going down just as fast. So if they're both going down the elevator shaft at the same speed, the dollar index might not change that much, because of what it's being compared against. But where you're going to find the real comparison would be against its purchasing power. And this would also explain something too. Think about this for a minute before I end the show. The Fed's chasing this 2% inflation that they keep talking about. Oh, we got to get 2% inflation. And they're at 1.75 right now, I think it is, according to their own books, But they need that extra 25 basis points. So they're willing to risk everything going into an inflationary crisis for 0.25%. Doesn't make any sense. But if you realize the real motive is to chase this curve, and it's got nothing to do with a 2% inflation target, that's just a ruse so that they can keep chasing this curve up because they have to. Crazy. See you guys later, and listen, have a great day, and give me a thumbs up. Bye-bye, guys.